Hello. Now that we assembled our rover and made it move, we want to understand how the steering works exactly. For that, we have loaded the Steer 2 program on our rover, and it shows up like this. And we can choose the steer variable by pushing button B. Pushing button B changes our display and displays 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 LEDs on the right or on the left, which reflects the steer variable as it is in our code. What we're going to do is we set the rover on the ground on our track and we make it move. And it will move, it will wait a little bit, and it will move for 1 second, and then it will be a little bit off to the left, or a little bit off to the right, or a lot to the left, or a lot to the right. We will be measuring each time how far off the center line our rover got. And that measurement, how many inches off the center line, that measurement will be entered in our data table. We mark the floor with painter's blue tape for the starting position of the rover and a straight line right in front of the starting position, about 2 or 3 feet long. We set the rover always with the front wheel pulled to the back, always the same way, onto the markings for the starting position. We turn the rover on, and we choose for each of our measurements, we choose the steer variable by pushing button B. I have chosen 7. So this would be steer 7. We set the rover in the starting position and push button. The rover waits and then drives towards the right because it was steer equaled a positive number. We measure the distance of the front wheel. The front wheel is right here. We measure the distance of the front wheel to the center of the straight line. I read about 4 inches. And 4 inches is the data point which we enter in our data table for steer equals 7. If we choose steer as a different number, we will be measuring a different deviation from the center line, and these are the data in our data table. Let's get started. We choose steer equals 0 as a starting point. Pull the front wheel straight and start the rover. The rover drove towards the left. Towards the left, these are negative numbers. So we measure the distance of the front wheel. In my case, this is 2.5 inches. And we enter negative 2.5 in our data table for steer equals 0. We increase steer to 1. This is steer 1. Set our rover on the starting point and push button A. and the rover still is driving towards the left. The measurement is 2 inches, so a negative 2 inches into the data table. Steer equals 2. Back to the starting position. Gives us half an inch still towards the left. That is a negative 0.5 in our data table. Steer equals 3. The rover the first time drove to the right as it's supposed to be, and the distance is 1 inch. This is a positive 1 in the data table for steer equals 3. Steer equals 4. Measured to 2.5 inches. 2.5 inches into the data table at steer equals 4. Steer equals 5 is 3 inches at steer equals 5. Next is 6. The rover is driving 4.5 inches towards the right, 4.5 in the data table. Seven. Three and a half inches towards the right. 8. Six inches towards the right. A number 6 in the data table for steer equals 8. 9. 6.5 inches to the right. 10. 7 inches to the right for steer equals 10. And now if we push button B one more time, steer will go back to 0. This is the indication of steer equals 0. We take another measurement for steer equals 0. The rover is going 2 inches to the left. Pushing button B again will now give us a negative 1. This is a 1 to the left. Steer is a negative 1. Two and a half inches to the left. That's a negative 2.5 in our data table. Negative 2. Gives us the same number, 2.5 inches to the left. Steer negative 3. It looks like the rover is doing the same thing. Negative 2.5, we enter that number in our data table. Negative 4. Now we see 4 inches. I measure 4 inches towards the left. Negative 5. Negative 4.5 inches to the left. Negative 6 gives us 7.5 inches towards the left. Negative 7 turns the rover 8 inches to the left. Negative 8 gives us 8 inches to the left, same number. Negative 9 gives us 9 inches towards the left. And finally, negative 10 is our last measurement. And the result of the measurement is 9 inches towards the left, a negative 9 in our data table. We have completed the steering calibration of the rover.